The Visions of Eternity trailer has dropped, and we have gotten a lot of information about the expansion, and we will be getting a lot more information about the expansion as we approach the launch date. Where in this video, I want to go ahead and take a lot of time to give a comprehensive overview of a lot of story speculation, as well as some open world speculation, and then a little bit of other speculation related to elite specializations and homesteads and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and get started, where we can just watch the trailer and then give a deep dive analysis into the trailer.
Whatever the Inquest are searching for, we need to find it first.
These fools have no idea the power that's buried here. The ley energies on Castora flow in abundance. The wildlife is vicious. Finding the future requires exceptional vision. We will use every tool at our disposal. After this is done, they'll remember us forever.
The trailer is definitely very cool, especially with the title card, but let's go ahead and go basically frame by frame and just do a deep dive into everything we can see in this trailer. We're starting off, we of course have the basic trailer information, and then this is definitely very loud. I'll go ahead and turn it down just a tiny bit, so sorry about that. But we immediately start off with some pirate themed stuff going on, where this looks just like a Corsair vessel from Elona, which is very, very interesting, where we know we are on an unknown island, where I'm very curious where this island is going to be, and we can speculate about that in a little bit. But it definitely seems like we're going to have some Canthan and Elonian themes into this expansion, with pirates and other individuals sailing to this island, primarily from Cantha and Elona, where we will probably be interacting with the Corsairs a lot, and then maybe some different like military organizations along the way. Where this is, of course, a very cool looking boat, and I'm very interested to see how they're going to incorporate like Elona and Cantha into this expansion, with also kind of like an Inquest storyline. It kind of feels like Sandswept Isles in many ways, which is the first speculation video that I made about us potentially returning to Dashka, where we have like some Elonian stuff and some Inquest stuff going on, but it is in a very brand new area, which is very exciting to see, like a brand new area where the ship is just going to be sailing there and presumably be there.
The Inquest are searching for.
We have the Inquest coming here, and then we have these two characters. This character on the right is Saida the Sly, who for all intents and purposes is the leader of the Corsairs, and this is her boat that we saw, where we've seen this boat in the domain of Istan, where Saida is definitely a very interesting character, because the last time we really saw her involved in the story was in the End of Dragons expansion, where she teamed up with Canuck to start a business empire, and based on her clothing here, it seems like her business empire has definitely been a success, where maybe we'll see Canuck in this expansion. That would definitely be very interesting. But the actual last time we saw her was right at the end of the Janther Wilds expansion. So basically the last patch before this expansion, we saw Saida, and we also saw Canuck, I believe, where they were hanging out with the Tyrian Alliance. So we see these two individuals involved with the Tyrian Alliance, and this is probably going to be one of the biggest connections from like Genther Wilds into this expansion, Visions of Eternity, where we are going to be interacting with Saida and potentially Canuck a lot throughout the next expansion, as we also interact with some other characters. But I could definitely see Saida being the character that we interact with in order to like begin the expansion, where maybe she takes us from like Lion's Arch or from Alona, potentially lore-wise, to this new island where we will begin our adventures. And then we have this character on the left side here who looks like an Asuran ritualist necromancer, where definitely very cool looking, but I don't think this is necessarily any specific character, and I think this might just be a representative of the playable character, whereas I just said we'll be interacting with Saida, as we can see potentially this playable character interacting with Saida here, but maybe this is a more important character than I think, where maybe this is like an Asuran that we'll be interacting with, where like necromancers can learn about ritualism from this individual. And then since we are interacting a lot with the Asuran, where this is really a heavily Asuran themed expansion, we might be interacting with her in that capacity as well. But to continue forward,
We need to find it first.
where
Whatever the Inquest are searching for, we need to find it first.
we can see Saida talking about the Inquest searching for something, and we need to find it first. So a very basic plot point, where Inquest wants something, we probably shouldn't let the Inquest have something, and maybe it's something that is useful for the Tyrian Alliance. But then into this next frame, we can see this boat here, which is very cool, and then this boat, which reminds me of the ones in the Domain of Istan again, but during the Commodon like meta event, where it's also a Corsair vessel. But both of these look very, very cool, and also peek at the waves here. I love waves so much. Where it looks like we might be having some more like rainy oceans and kind of like wave vibes going on with this expansion, which I loved a lot in Genther Century. I thought was very, very cool there, and maybe they were like kind of practicing for this expansion with that. That could kind of be like cool foreshadowing in hindsight, but I also love like the waves in the Aetherblade Retreat story mission all the way back in Living World Season 1, and I just have like a soft spot for them in Guild Wars 2 because they always look really cool. But this kind of just continues the same vibe of us moving forward towards this new island. And here's the new island as someone yells land hole, and it is very magical, where I was thinking that this expansion could potentially be in Joteca, because from the Elite Specialization teaser there did seem to be like a hint of a magical type of stuff going on, where this island seems very, very magical. And we learn in just a second, a bit of a spoiler, where there is a lot of leyline stuff going on, which we have been interacting a lot with the Antikytheria throughout the entire Guild Wars 2 story, where the Antikytheria, from the Asuran's point of view, from their kind of like college knowledge, is the concept of the eternal alchemy. And I have a full half-hour video about the Antikytheria if you want to go ahead and check that out. I'll link it down in the description. But it seems like we are definitely going to be interacting a lot with that in this expansion, especially since we kind of have like the concept of visions, which is deeply connected to the eternal alchemy and the Antikytheria, like we saw in Living World Season 2. And I think with an Inquest storyline that is heavily revolving around a magic storyline, which is heavily revolving around the concept of the Antikytheria, where so many forces beyond Tyria are now really, really interested in Tyria because of the magic and like the magical imbalance that Oreen is dealing with, where we are just dealing with all of them throughout the last 2 expansions, and potentially into this expansion we could potentially be dealing with more demons like later on, where maybe the Inquest like unleashed something upon Tyria, either accidentally or on purpose. But this shot is really, really cool, where we kind of just got like a shot from the waters of this new island. This kind of reminds me of when we were going into Genther Century in that trailer, where we were kind of just like approaching the island from the ocean. And it is very, very magical and very cool looking and kind of tropical. So we got like some tropical themes going on, where this is kind of like South Sun Cove, the expansion, where there's also some more things that kind of remind me of South Sun Cove that we'll see in a moment. But we can see a ton of shipwrecks, which is very interesting that there's been like a lot of shipwrecks on this island. And you can see maybe a tent right here. This blue thing might be a tent. Or we might also have like a little bit of a tiny settlement here potentially, although it might just be more wreckage. And then we have this really cool ship that's just up here on this pillar. So presumably they caught like a massive wave and then like flipped around or something and then just like landed on here. Or maybe something magical happened where it was like thrown onto that island. But we can see a lot of very cool trees and just a lot of foliage in general. We have this ritualist character again with Saida, who of course we talked about earlier. And then all the way over here we have some interesting characters. I believe this is probably just going to be a Corsair character, and this is probably just going to be like a lieutenant of Saida if I were to guess, where we might know who this character is. I don't recognize him just immediately, but this might be a new character that we get introduced to. We then also have two interesting characters over here who look like they might be Astral Ward members. I can't entirely tell from like this so far away, this is so zoomed out, but of course we have Iskar in here, and we also have an Astral Ward waypoint. So we can assume, based on this, that the Astral Ward will be involved in this expansion, as they have been in the Genthy Wilds, and of course in Soto, where we will be interacting with them a lot. And it seems like we kind of have like Saida as like a replacement for Malice in some ways, where now we are interacting with Iskarin with Saida instead of Iskarin with Malice or Iskarin with Zoja, where we also got just more shots of this island where it's kind of like the same vibes, very magical, very tropically, and a lot of like shipwrecks and wreckage. But then we have a character talking as well.
These fools have no idea.
Where this sounds like the main villain that we will be interacting with at the start of the expansion, where he's talking about these fools have no idea.
Have no idea. The power that's buried here.
About the powers that are buried here. I'll go back in a second.
Energies on Castora flow in abundance.
Where the ley energies on Castora flow in abundance, and we'll pause on that for a second. So we're going to be interacting a lot with ley energies, and we will be interacting with like magic and stuff throughout this expansion, as we have done in every single Guild Wars 2 expansion, including the launch of Guild Wars 2, which some people might be a little bit tired about that, but really the Antikytheria is like the core foundation of the Guild Wars 2 story, and it's basically everything that the Guild Wars 2 story has been. And I think as we continue to deal with like the whole magic situation and the demon situation, and until Orion can get everything situated, we will continue to interact with this concept moving forward. But to pause at different frames, we have another shot of the island here, which was just name dropped as Castora, and this is a really cool shot. It kind of reminds me of Lona in some ways, where this also reminds me of like Cobbler's Cove, like back here, where we have these like little orbs, but we just got like a bunch of trees and like different waterfalls and mountains. And this is a really cool tree here, where there's a really cool tree in a moment, and we can see like a little bit of a tunnel. It's probably going into this little grotto back here, and really can't get too much from this, but we can definitely see it's going to be an island that has some verticality going on. We got like maybe an event that takes place here with, what are these, like braziers or like launch pads or something? I have no idea, but very, very cool looking. And this is very cool looking. This tree is also cool. It's not the tree I was just talking about, where this kind of reminds me of like Nagrand from World of Warcraft, if you have any idea what I'm talking about. But we can see some interesting like flora and fauna. It looks like there's moas. There's like a little something right here. Can't entirely tell. And we can see it just looks really, really cool. Very, very magical. We can see a little bit of maybe a building or like a sailboat here, and some more interesting floating islands. But I think the most important part about the screen is the background, actually, because we can see what looks like the skybox for the map with the distant horizons, which we have seen since the Ender Dragons expansion, where we have so much here in the background, where it is very, very massive, and it really goes off into the distance. And we can even see like what looks like a snow-capped peak right here, which means that this island that we are on is either very, very close to mainland Tyria, and we can see mainland Tyria in the background somewhere, or the island itself is absolutely massive, and we are only going to see a small part of it in this expansion as we explore through only 4 maps, where that's very, very exciting. I'm not entirely sure. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a moment, but based on my first guess, I could maybe see this being mainland Tyria and we're like on an island, but we can go ahead and dive deep into a map in the future. But also my gut instinct says we're like really far away from mainland Tyria, so I'm not entirely sure.
Oh, that's very...
We have another shot here where this looks very jungly, kind of like Heart of Thorns, where we got a lot of magic going on here that we can see, and not too much else going on. This kind of reminds me of like Suwon bubbles in a way, but these are just like magical, like potentially something kind of like volatile or unbound magic from Living World Season 3 and 4. Another cool shot where we're talking about ley lines, and we can see that there are ley lines ripping through this island, and it is very magical, kind of same vibes, you know, tropical island, ley line energy, magical chaos. The central theme and concept of this entire expansion and this area of the world, which looks very cool. But we will definitely be interacting with ley lines, so we can probably expect some ley line events and stories and stuff going on. Where we got another shot here, which kind of just continues the vibes, where we can see little critters right over here. Can't entirely tell what those are. They kind of look like salamander otters or something like that, but really not too much else to say about this. Just, you know, a very cool looking shot like every other shot in this trailer. You have another shot here where we got the classic pink moas, and the same, you know, we got kind of a tropical environment, magic everywhere. It's cool to see some of the moas where we're going to see some creatures that we have seen before and some creatures that are brand new. And I think a very interesting thing that I feel like this area really points out, but like a lot of other areas do as well, is kind of how Guild Wars 2 expansions are nowadays, where we see a lot of reused stuff, where there aren't like too many like fresh brand new models introduced to the game, which like different people have different opinions about, and I definitely love to see new models, but I also understand, you know, reusing assets, where this does kind of feel like a lot of areas that we have explored in Guild Wars 2, but at the same time it does feel like pretty fresh at the same time. Where here is the big shot, where this is a massive tree, and it kind of seems like a lot of the ley lines are coming towards this tree, and this might be like a central part of the expansion. I've done my top 10 trees in Guild Wars 2 video, and I feel like if I made that nowadays, this tree would definitely be on that list, because just look at how incredible looking it is. And this really kind of feels like maybe it resembles the tree we saw in the Elite Specialization art, but I think that tree is more like the other trees we have seen in the rest of the trailer. But this tree is just so cool looking, and it is interesting to see another prominent tree playing a part in this expansion, where maybe there's some sort of potential connection to Mordermoth here, where potentially this could be another like pale tree type of situation, but I feel like that is very, very unlikely to happen, and I think we're definitely focusing more on like this is just a tree that happens to be here, and maybe it's been infused by like a lot of ley lines, which has allowed it to grow to such like a big point. But maybe we'll see some more hints to maybe another Savari themed story going on here, where we do see like Asuran and Savari themed stories kind of interconnected a lot with like the like background missions and Living World Season 2, and also where they are located in the world. And then we do see Mordermoth being a big part of the Antikytheria, so maybe we see some sort of story going on with that here. Let's go ahead back a little bit. And now we have a brand new section which we can go ahead and just listen to really quickly and then come back.
The wildlife is
So we got some very cool shots here, where if I come back to here, we have a brand new enemy who is not necessarily like a brand new enemy. It looks like some sort of raptor enemy who looks incredible. I really like this model and like this color scheme on this raptor, which, speaking of the color scheme, I talked a lot about during like my speculation. It seemed like it was going to be kind of like Path of Fire vibes, and that is definitely true, where we're getting a lot of Path of Fire vibes with this expansion, but it is also really kind of like tropical sunset themed now that we see in hindsight with the entire concept of this expansion. Continuing forward, we can get a shot of that ritualist friend that we saw earlier. Again, I think this is just a player, but also peek these crystals in the background. Why do I keep saying peek? I guess I'm like 25. Where these, at first glance, kind of feel like Orion crystals in some way, but they don't really look like Orion crystals. Where there might be some sort of like crystal energy magic thing going on here. Maybe this is kind of just like a natural resource on this island that just exists for decorative purposes and is kind of just part of like the art style of the island. Where I love these flowers too, and all the plants just look so incredible. And also kind of looks like there might be some mesmer stuff going on here, where it's very interesting, but we can see that the Asuran is attacking one of the raptors here, and we just got more plants in the background. And then we get a very quick shot here of this enemy, which this is kind of what I was talking about, kind of continuing those South Sun vibes, where this feels like an insane type of Karka, where this is so cool looking. It also feels kind of like a Titan in some ways, but like a tropical Titan, where it feels kind of like Astral Wardy right there. Maybe this is like some sort of demon. I'm not entirely sure. It does have like some ornate gilding on it, which like would make me think it's a little less natural necessarily, where it wouldn't be like, maybe this is like native wildlife, but also feels like maybe it's come from somewhere else. It kind of looks like shackles, but then we have like on the head here, where also this reminds me of that one icon from the Elite Specializations, but like this kind of looks like some ornate jewelry in some ways. So maybe this is like part of like locking it down somewhere, but it kind of feels like there's like a chain here or something. So it really feels like maybe some sort of demon, but maybe some sort of like different type of like Karka-like creature that is native to this island. As you can see, some trees and stuff in the background there, and just some more magic. And we get another shot where it does definitely kind of look like chains, but also just feels like ornate jewelry, I suppose. But then we got some more of these like special effects here that does like feel kind of Astral Wardy, kind of just like night themed, you know, mists themed, which really gives me the vibes that this might be some sort of like demon like creature, which is very interesting. I would hope this isn't necessarily another Titan, because it kind of feels like we like finished the Titan storyline. So I definitely feel like this is probably going to be another demon, since we are definitely focusing a lot on demons in the Guild Reach 2 story, with like different forces from other worlds coming into Tyria to try to take some magic. And we didn't really see too many like themes of that in this trailer besides this one right here. So this kind of feels like maybe it's like a one-off demon that like just happened to find its way into Tyria and we have to deal with it. But again, it might just be something native to this island. Where let's get a very quick shot right here, pause, where it's just the background here, and basically looks the same as we have seen before. This looks very cool. But then we get this incredibly cool shot of a skimmer, where the skimmer is the mount that is being focused on in this expansion, which I think is really, really cool, and you can get a little bit of a hint of what we are going to see with the skimmer in this expansion. But it just looks super cool, and this definitely looks like it would be native to this island, which it feels kind of similar to like this creature that we just looked at in some ways. So maybe this is like a native creature, but this is just a really cool looking skimmer that I love a lot. Now let's go ahead and listen to the audio for a second.
Finding the future requires exceptional vision.
Where finding the future is really interesting. So we have some sort of like Asuran like inquest shenanigans going on, where they are definitely trying to find something powerful, something magically, and it seems like there's something that the inquest know about this place that's going to be really, really important for the story, of course. And it kind of feels like this character is kind of similar to Anka from the End of Dragon story, where Anka has a very kind of like strict view and concept and idea of Tyria and magic and whatnot, so much so that it blinds her from everything else. And maybe we see something kind of going on with this Asuran, because that is a story that we do see with the Asuran, where they get so hyper fixated on something that it blinds them from everything else. And when you combine that with some of the traits that we see with Asurans, with like tenacity and whatnot, it can be a very, very deadly combination and a very dangerous one. But this just looks so cool. Where we have this brand new creature here. I don't think we've seen this anywhere else in Guild Wars 2. It kind of looks like some other stuff, but it looks so incredibly cool. And also, this has to be a ranger pet. Come on. There's no way rangers can't tame this. We also see some crabs in the background there, but this just looks so cool. It's like an alligator, crocodile, dog, dinosaur hybrid, which looks just super, super cool. More magic and more trees and more wreckage and whatnot, but this is such a cool looking enemy. And we can see it just sitting there on the beach, where it looks like we have maybe a Savari and a Norn in the background there, which is interesting. But then we get another shot of the skimmer here, where the skimmer moving very, very quickly on land and over water, it looks like, and is shooting some sort of like magical missiles at this enemy, which the sound effects for these missiles sounds really, really cool. Just listen to it really quickly. Just super, super cool. But it looks like we'll be able to like ride on the skimmer and like maybe move around very, very easily and like launch some missiles at enemies. And I'm kind of curious what that's going to be like, because we see that with like the siege turtle and the sky scale, where they are really, really, really bad DPS, to the point where people get really angry at other people when people are just sitting on their like siege turtle or sky scale, because it feels like they're not really contributing too much. So I am kind of scared to see maybe something like that with the skimmer again, where it'll be interesting to see how they incorporate this into like different gameplay mechanics and like different events and stuff, because you need the sky scale or the siege turtle in order to destroy like certain things, to progress events, and also to get through like different areas, where we'll definitely see something like that with the skimmer, which we did also see with the warclaw. But it will be interesting to see how they balance kind of like the combat aspect of the skimmer in this expansion from like their lessons with the sky scale and the siege turtle, where you have to find like a fine line of it being useful but not too overpowered, where everyone just sits on their skimmer, but useful in a way where people don't get mad when people are on their skimmer. But I think part of that is kind of just learning when to use the skimmer and when not to use the skimmer, which is going to be a lesson that a lot of people have to learn as we approach this expansion. But it just looks really, really cool. And we get another shot here where this looks very, very cool. And we have another like alcove here, but we can really see like big roots right here. It looks like maybe this is just like a rock formation, but it looks kind of distinctly different than this, so I'm not entirely sure. But maybe it's connected to the tree. It's kind of like shaped in that same way as well, where there's some crabs and there's some wreckage and just some different trees and whatnot. But just looks so cool. Where we get another shot here where it looks like we have our friendly rich list here, and there are some pirates. Now this seems like pirates and not corsairs, like the corsairs we came on, because we got some kind of like classic like pirate cannons here, and this one is hostile towards this, who we can presume is an ally or ourselves, where if this individual is hostile towards this individual, we can assume this is an enemy. So we will be dealing with this enemy, where we have like a scepter and a pistol here, which is cool, where we got like a very like deadly like fire attack. And I don't think this is showing an elite specialization, I could be wrong, but we do see maybe some like engineering shenanigans going on here, which is really, really cool. Very intricate detail on whatever that is there. Got like a big crate and whatnot, and just some sort of like pirate like base, where it feels, you know, kind of similar to like the vibes of Lion's Arch, where they incorporate wrecked ships and whatnot. But very cool looking. And then we get like some sort of like flak shot here that launches towards us, and then we can deal with her. But then we get this shot here, which is incredible, and this is going to be showing some of the other elite specializations where we've only seen Ritualist really so far. But we got that Firefox in the background, which is the same color scheme as this character, so this feels like it might be the Firefox elite specialization, where I feel like it's going to be an elementalist. And then we have right here, kind of looks like a Mesmer, where we've got a lot of really cool stuff, showing some of the new weapons and stuff. And then we have this character right here, who has really cool fashion, I'll say, but also looks like a rifle. So I'm not entirely sure. Maybe this is like a thief type of character, kind of feels like an adventuring character or something. But then we can see some of the elite specialization stuff there, where we see presumably an elementalist. I'll probably know more by the time I finish recording every part of this video. But this looks so cool. What a cool looking model. It looks so cool. And it seems like you will be able to channel this ability, and you'll be able to like use it to attack enemies. So I kind of thought maybe this would be kind of like a druid type of thing, where you can turn into something. Druid as in like the typical D&D sense, not like the druids we see in Guild Wars 2, where it does just look really, really cool. And it's probably just going to be like a big attack, which I'm really interested to see if it's going to be like really different depending on which attunement you are in, where we could have fire attunement, which is this, but then we could maybe just have like a blue watery version of this dog, or maybe a completely different type of animal altogether. I'm sure by the time this video is out, we probably already know. But then we got maybe a thief. Definitely feels like a thief. We got like a lot of gold here. I was thinking maybe a ranger, but we got a rifle here, and we know that there's no new weapons for any of the elite specs. But this just looks really, really cool here. Is this like a, what is this? This is like a char that's just like down on the ground or something. Or maybe this is like a new type of enemy. Is this like a bulky scrit or something? I'm sure this must be a char, but the tail seems wrong. Very, very weird. But it's sitting like right next to this thief-like character. Maybe it's a troll actually. That would make more sense than a char. It kind of looks like a troll, but it's wearing like a lot of clothing or whatever. Maybe it's a brand new type of enemy. I can't really tell at all. It kind of has the animation of a char maybe, but maybe trolls have the same animation, I forget. But we got another one right over here on the right side as well, where we do know there's like some treasure stuff going on, so maybe this could be chars digging, but honestly, I'm a little stumped on this. If you have any ideas, let me know. Could be a troll, could be a char, could be a new type of like ally potentially. I don't feel like it would be an enemy because it's like just digging right next to this character. But who knows? Maybe it is an enemy. I just keep staring at this. It's been a bit now. Honestly, no idea. But we can see a lot of gold here, which is really cool. Character looks cool. Background, same old. And then we get the bard / minstrel, which definitely looks like it is a mesmer specialization. And we can see here where the mesmer is playing a flute, which is really, really cool. And in a second we'll see a lute as well. So a lot of people think this might be incorporating the F1 through F4 skills, where instead of shatters you basically incorporate some sort of like musical instrument that you play for whatever reason. Where there's like two big theories. One, the more basic idea is there is a different instrument connected to each one, where when you play each one it's like a set skill with like a cast time that you do, where you play the instrument and then it does whatever. Where the other thing is kind of similar, where you have each F1 through F4 skill that is connected to a different instrument, but the instrument is a kit. So kind of similar to like Firebrand, where the F1 skills you basically pick up like a tome and then you get different abilities. You'll see the F1 skills, you pick up the instrument and you get different abilities with each instrument, and you can play each instrument to do different things, which I think either way it'll be really interesting. A lot of people don't like kits, so it would be like kind of overwhelming for them, or maybe a more simple approach would be cool, but it would be very interesting to see like 4 different types of like gameplay styles connected to different instruments being incorporated across like full kit lines. Background very purpley because of the mesmer shenanigans going on here, where this looks kind of Astro Wardy right here a little bit, like destroyed Astro Ward. Can't entirely tell, but there's a lot of different like naturey things going on. And then the next frame is very, very interesting, but let's go back just a second to listen.
We will use every tool at our disposal.
Where they say we will use every tool at their disposal, and this is where we get the big villains of this expansion. Where it's come right here, where we can see Inquest, which we've talked a little bit about, but we can see like a lot of Inquest technology where they have really set up on this island. There's like hay bales right here and some magic and whatnot, but just a lot of Inquest technology. Into the next frame, we can see 2 Inquests right here, and also a helicopter, which is very, very cool, where the Assyrians are using helicopters, which we usually connect with like the Char and also like the Pact, but like this specific model is like more of a Char helicopter than a Pact helicopter. But you can see some Inquest pylons and buildings and whatnot right here. And then a couple of Inquest characters where my gut instinct is these are just like throwaway random NPCs that are just like generic mobs that you fight, but maybe these 2 are important and we'll meet them. I don't recognize them. This one kind of looks a little familiar, but I don't really recognize them too much from any other part of Guild Wars 2. But it's just cool to see the helicopter here. Kind of looks like there's like a nest on the helicopter that might be in like the background, or maybe something interesting going on. Actually, it kind of looks like maybe it's like part of where it's docked right now, so maybe there's like supplies there. But then we get this big building here, which looks very cool, and definitely kind of getting some of that like Rata Primus vibes from the Sandswept Isles, where this looks very, very interesting above here, some sort of mechanism. And there are lasers going off into different directions. Now that might just be like an aesthetic thing, but this might be something connected to the mists, because we see it going off into different parts of the sky, where maybe it's connecting to different mist realms, and they are doing something on Tyria to basically like take something to another realm or to bring something in from another realm. And like this is kind of like a central building that is utilized for those purposes, but just looks very, very cool. A very cool looking cannon here, some sort of like mega laser with like a more spherical build, which looks incredible. And I think this might just be like the other area we were just looking at, or something very similar. But we can also see some like Inquest like raptors right here, which we'll get a better look at in a moment. But this looks like an Inquest pocket raptor, so some people might be having nightmares on this island. But there we got a little bit of stuff back there, and then we get another shot of that mist's potential like mechanism, where we can see there's also some ley lines coming into here. So it seems like some sort of like central power nexus, and what they are using this for is definitely very interesting to think about. Where the main story I definitely thought was going to be connected to like the gods and whatnot, because of Janthe Wilds and because of what I've seen the story heading towards, but it is another story that doesn't really seem necessarily to be connected to the gods. We could see this change up a little bit into the future, but we can just see lasers going off in every which way, and it just looks incredible. And then we got a very important site here where we have our Richless character right here, who we have been chatting with, but in the background is Retlock Brimstone, who is returning to the story once again, which is going to be exciting to see because we haven't interacted with Retlock too much recently, and we have interacted with Zoja recently, so we just get another member of Destiny's Edge hanging out with us, where we will kill some Inquests together. Like this looks like somebody is guarding Axe 2 on the wall here, or maybe we have like this kind of like ice like spike thing here, which might be a brand new ability that we can use. Not entirely sure.
This is done.
Where we see, of course, Escarin once again, so it looks like Escarin and Retlock have formally met. And then we got like some Indiana Jones action going on here, where we have like a special huge blue spherical like boulder coming and chasing after us, and there's like a lot of stuff going on here with different like effects and whatnot, where it looks kind of like Astro Wardy. It looks like maybe we see traps related to one of the specializations we see on the ground here, and then just some generic attacks. It looks like one of the specs are getting traps. It definitely feels like that, but maybe not. But then we have this scene here, which is incredible looking, where this looks like this is the main villain for the expansion, which maybe we learn a little bit more about, and maybe we learn a little bit more about him in an upcoming article that I'll read in a few minutes, or it happens after I finish making this video. But he looks super cool, and we can see he has a giant golem here in the background, and then he has 2 Inquest raptors, which just look absolutely incredible. So this definitely seems like just the person who's in charge of all the Inquest shenanigans going on here. And let's go back just a second to listen.
After this is done, they'll remember us forever.
So based on that, he does seem kind of like power hungry, and it will be really interesting to see what their primary goals are in this expansion and why they are on this island in the first place. But for whatever reason they're here and they look incredibly cool as they are doing so. And it's always nice to kill some Inquest because they are definitely very, very annoying at many points in the Guild Wars 2 story, so it'll be a little cathartic. But it's also really cool to see a more Asuran focused storyline dedicated to an expansion, because we have gotten a lot of Asuran stories before, but not really one that has an entire expansion focused around it, even though we are focused on kind of an Asuran enemy organization. But these 2 raptors in this Asuran tech just look super, super cool. And then we get this quote here: what would you sacrifice for power? So it definitely seems like we are kind of returning to that concept of being power hungry, where presumably this Inquest is sacrificing a lot, potentially sacrificing Tyria for power. But this could also come back onto the player character, where maybe the player character is having to sacrifice something for something. So there might be a lot of like sacrifice themes in this expansion that we will be interacting with. But then we got to the end title card, which looks incredibly cool here, where it starts with kind of like a tropical kind of vaporwavy sunset over an ocean, which is going to be probably a skybox that we see, which I'm excited for. And then we get the start of a very cool Inquest box animation right here, where it like combines into that previous vaporwavy sunset type of thing, where we then also got like the water here as it comes out, and then it separates to show us Guild Wars 2 Visions of Eternity. So we definitely got some Eternal Alchemy stuff potentially going on with the Inquest, and maybe some visions similar to stuff we see with the Eternal Alchemy, and just overall looks incredibly cool. And then we get all the stuff for pre-purchasing, where we do get the Commodore's hat skin, which is very interesting. It basically kind of confirms, a lot of those pirate corsair themes we've been talking about. Chromatic resin weapon skin is kind of interesting. I think this definitely fits more into like the vibes of the area we are going to be going to, compared to like who we are taking with us, and also enemies that may potentially be there. But then over here we can see we got the Castoran tentacled skimmer, so some sort of like native wildlife, and also fairy dust gathering tools. So this does seem like a very magical kind of like fairy-esque type of environment, so we'll probably see some fairies around there, though we have seen like stuff like this previously in Guild Wars 2. It's cool to see this raptor and Inquest golem here with the trees. And then of course there's just some gems, and I don't think there's really anything special after this. So largely a really, really cool trailer. I do wish there was more that's released with this trailer at the same time. Marketing is always kind of like a struggle point with Guild Wars 2, but nevertheless incredibly cool looking. But then we get some more information in the form of blog posts, and there are going to be more blog posts and more videos that release, which, just to recap, I'll talk about some of those videos and blog posts further on in this video, but also some of that stuff will be released after I finish making this video and after I upload it. But today we're thrilled to announce our next expansion, Guild Wars 2 Visions of Eternity, and its release date. Guild Wars 2 Visions of Eternity launches on October 28th, 2025, and like the previous 2 expansions, will bring with it a year of story chapters and 3 major content updates. You can get an overview of what to expect from our 6th expansion on the official page, and we'll be sharing tons of additional details between now and launch. Adventure on an unknown island. Tyria's leaders are anxious about rumors of covert Inquest voyages launched in search of Castora. an island silver moat that has long been thought to be inaccessible or even non-existent. The risks involved prevent all but the most tenacious and perhaps foolhardy of pursuers from investigating the Inquest's plan. Your race to discover the Inquest plot will lead you across 2 open-world regions at launch, each filled with magical energies and strange creatures. 2 additional maps will open as the story continues over the course of a year. For Guild Wars 2 Visions of Eternity, we'll be releasing story chapters differently than we've done for the previous 2 expansions. To read about this and other insights, see our Guild Wars 2 Janther Wilds retrospective blog from last week. Another cool shot right here. Expansion features new elite specializations. Elite specializations are back. Influences from members of the Terran Alliance bring new ways to play each of our 9 professions. In Guild Wars 2 Visions of Eternity, you'll experience new trait lines, profession mechanics, and healing utility and elite skills. So basically everything you would expect except a weapon, which we already knew about. Adding many new ways to play your characters. From August 20th to 27th, this is very exciting, we're holding an in-game preview week for you to beta test all the elite specializations, and I'm super excited for that. I always love the preview events. When that preview arrives, we'll ask for your feedback to help us take each elite specialization through the polish phase and into launch. All players with the Guild Wars 2 account in good standing may participate in the preview. We'll be back next week to kick off a series of blogs and live streams to talk about the elite specializations in great detail. Stay tuned. So I probably won't necessarily talk about any of that in this video, but I might highlight some things on streams and also maybe potentially some other videos if I get interested in that. But I care more about the story and the world, but also masteries. Skimmer Mastery in Guild Wars 2 Visions of Eternity. The Skimmer mount will be featured with new and updated mechanics. Hover, dive, and soar faster than ever before as you explore the dangerous and beautiful environments of Castora. Raids and combat. In 2026, raids and strikes will be unified under the same structure, which I'm actually very, very excited for, from like both a convenience point of view and also just from like a new player's perspective point of view, where I'm not a new player but I know a lot about like what new players go through, and I think this will be really, really helpful. Improving access for new players, oh there we go, and streamlining rewards. We're also investing in systems that help facilitate group content, which we'll talk about more in the future, and this is very interesting to see. And we can speculate that this might be potentially some type of like LFR, or maybe an LFG overhaul, or maybe some more like training opportunities. But 2 new raid encounters, including Challenger modes and Legendary mode, will be added in the major updates to Guild Wars 2 Visions of Eternity next year. In addition, a new Convergence and Fractal with Challenge mode will also release in the final expansion update next year, giving players a lot of obstacles to tackle and overcome, which I'm always excited for. Convergence, raids, and fractals I do care a little bit less about nowadays. Legendary treasures. Over the course of the expansion and its subsequent content updates, players can pursue new legendary items, 3 new weapons, a ring, an accessory, and the long requested aqua breather. And I'm really excited about this. So for the 3 new weapons, this could really be anything, but a lot of people think this will be underwater weapons, where we did just get a spear in the last expansion, but we can definitely get another spear, where that last spear is, you know, kind of like dedicated to like land spears, where maybe this one is more dedicated to being underwater with a trident and a spear gun legendary weapon as well, where we do see a lot of like water themes with this expansion. So I definitely feel like that's going to be like something that we will be experiencing a fair bit of. And also this does kind of feel like maybe this is one of the raid bosses and like main bosses of the story, and maybe a convergence boss, and maybe an open world boss as well, like we saw with Janther Wilds. But a new ring is super, super exciting because I have like the raid one, but I haven't gotten one from Road vs. Road PvP yet, so I can basically get that to finish up my legendary like collections for like all the accessory ring backpack stuff. But then we also get a new accessory, which is cool, and the long requested aqua breather, which I've been waiting for a very long time, and I am super excited to see this new legendary. And I'm definitely going to get that aqua breather and the ring. The weapons and accessory probably not, but we'll see. A new homestead. Players who own both Guild Wars 2 Janther Wilds and Guild Wars 2 Visions of Eternity will get to unlock a whole new homestead map, which I think is incredible to see that this feature is not being dropped. Where I really liked with Path of Fire and End of Dragons, where we got the new guild halls, and then unfortunately that trend did not continue. But now with Janther Wilds we got homesteads, and we see a new one being introduced, which I think is super, super important. because I really want to see like new homesteads added to the game. But on top of that, you will also be able to save your decoration layout and freely swap between the Janthiri and Castoran maps with the new layouts feature. We'll share more information about the new homestead and layouts in the coming months, which I think is incredibly important, because if you couldn't do that, I feel like many players would not even interact with this new homestead at all, because they wouldn't want to give up their old decorations. So I think this is great for that. And then this is great for people who want multiple layouts, where I have my house and I've been decorating my house exactly how I want it, but I really wanted to also make a jumping puzzle course in homesteads, and now I can do both, where I can have like my home, cozy vibe, like homestead plot that I live in, but then I can swap it out to a jumping puzzle that I can mess around with and invite people to try out, which I'm super excited for. And then other rewards, the Wizards Vault will continue to offer new seasonal rewards for players to earn as they play through the expansion. New relics will bring players more options for their builds and combat capabilities. And of course, you'll be able to earn new armor, weapons, recipes, emotes, and more. Where we also got pre-purchase bonuses, where we also get the Eternal Alchemist title, which is very cool. And then fashion forward, we have one final feature that will launch in one of the major updates to Guild Wars 2 Visions of Eternity next year, and will be available to all players regardless of expansion ownership. Fashion templates. Fashion templates function similarly to build and equipment templates, allowing players to save a template of the aesthetic features of their armor, back items, outfits, and dyes. We'll share more information here in the future about fashion templates and all the other features coming with Guild Wars 2 Visions of Eternity. You can read more about details about the full contents of Guild Wars 2 Visions of Eternity on the product page. It'll be a busy summer as we prepare to set sail for Castora, so stay tuned for more information, and I'm super excited. Where this post was amended on July 15 with a corrected list of features managed by Fashion Templates, where we get some more screenshots here. So this is kind of like that central base again, and we got our rich list on the skimmer, where then we can see a really cool shot here that looks like the Ranger, where we got the Canthan Phoenix, and this looks like maybe some sort of like Falconer Ranger, where we got these like big gloves here, and then a lot of birds. And that's just like a really incredibly interesting like gameplay mechanic, I think, where you can just control like swarms of birds to attack your enemies. I think that would be fun. But we also got like this massive tree in the background, which looks very, very cool. And also this mountain and stuff. Next, another shot of the Inquest base, which is basically the same from the trailer. And then we got this shot here, which is just a different angle when we saw from the trailer, which looks very, very cool. I really love this island with this massive tree. Such a cool vibe. Such a cool vibe. But then we got a more in-depth look at the Inquest here, where this looks like a typical Inquest base, where we can see this Inquest Raptor, which I think is really cool to see, like the Inquest Raptor being utilized, because like they have like some of these models and stuff for like different like Inquest stuff that we might also see added into different places of the expansion. But then here is very, very interesting. So this seems to be some sort of like ancient ruin, and maybe potentially this was like once an Asuran gate, so maybe this could be an Asuran ruin. This kind of reminds me in some ways of Ore for some reason. It kind of feels like Ore, but it could be an ancient Asuran ruin where maybe the Inquest are coming back to basically pick up the pieces from some Asuran shenanigans from a long time ago. But this could also be any number of different things, maybe some sort of ancient like human civilization that used to live on this island. So maybe we'll get to learn about some deep lore connected to this island and its rich history as we explore through the expansion. But then we get this really cool shot here, very, very mystical and magical. Hopefully there's no ice cream around here, where it just looks really, really beautiful. And then we get this shot, and this shot really confused me at first, but then it was pointed out to me that the name of this screenshot basically suggests that it is the new homestead. So I think this is kind of what we can expect with the upcoming homestead. And we can also see some of the new assets that we might get, where we have this like giant like Canthan ship that is turned like this, and basically now serves as like a skyscraper, where we have like a front door there. So I guess this might be like on purpose, or maybe this is like the main building that you get, similar to the one in Janthir Wilds, where we then have like a bridge, all the bridges that come over to this like building, where we have this like wind turbine thing. And then we got like a boat here, where maybe this is kind of like the animal pen or something. But very interesting looking. Got like the garden plots here. I think this is a really cool vibe, but just like for me personally and for like my like personal taste and aesthetics, I think I do like the Janther Wilds one like a fair bit more just based on this screenshot. But don't get me wrong, this does look really, really cool, and I'm excited to see what other stuff, because it definitely goes off in the distance there. But look, there's like some sort of like skull on this rock here. Maybe this is like an Ember Bay thing, but maybe we'll see like some skulls and rocks throughout the expansion, where just overall it looks very cool. Where we have this incredible area right here that I love so much. This kind of feels like a mixture of Lion's Arch with like Sky Pirates with like Cantha stuff, where we got a Char walking there. That's not Yvonne Ashblade, is it? Where we just got like some buildings built up in like the mountainside here with what looks like pipes and stuff, and we got like a little tent up there, and we have this very, very cool boat here, and it looks like there might be a sea mine in the water there. Overall, just an incredible looking area, and I'm so excited to explore through this place and to just hang out in all the different areas. Where I'm interested if there's going to be like a big hub or something, or if they're going to have something like Harvest Inn that's kind of like a big settlement that serves as the hub to some extent but isn't necessarily the hub. Whereas we load to the next page, which has been very slow for some reason, we can come to here, which is just another shot of this area during the day, which looks very, very cool. And then we got a shot of a Mesmer playing a lute, which is fun. And then we got this shot of this like crab Karka like enemy, where we got maybe Saida here, and then also our richless friend. We got this like massive tidal wave coming this way, which is very, very intimidating. And then it looks like some sort of like Char on the other side, which is cool. And then we got this very cool looking armor on this character, and the weapons, of course. And I think we are about at the end, where we looped back around to the beginning. And overall, just really, really cool stuff that I'm just very, very excited for this expansion. Here is the product page where we got the reveal trailer, and then this where we can get this concept art, which looks absolutely incredible. And when I first saw this, I thought maybe this was like Jolteca, but no, we're definitely going to Castora, where this is just really, really, really beautiful looking, and I'm super excited. Where we saw that, we see a kind of cool looking area that's like probably right next to this, which looks beautiful. And then we got some sort of insane thing going on here. Hold on, we got Rithok. Oh, where are we going? And then we got some sort of like magically imbued Tengu fairy goddess of nature Mesmer abilities doing Suan stuff. I have no idea what's going on here, but this looks super cool. And I would guess this is probably some sort of enemy that we will be interacting with that is kind of native to Castora, that kind of incorporates some of those nature things with some of the magic things, with some like the fairy vibes going on. And maybe this is like the other raid boss, where the Karka crab thing is also the other raid boss. But this just looks super cool. Where we do have this like Inquest Golem, it looks like, and then we got Ridlock, and then we got a Char just sitting here as well. We're gonna zoom back out and then take a look at the next, which there's actually no next, but as we go down here, we can see just some more screenshots of stuff we've already seen, and kind of just stuff highlighting everything we have talked about before. And largely, again, I'm very, very excited for this expansion. Now let's go ahead and take some time just to explore the roadmap a little bit and discuss where exactly Castora might be. Where so far all we know, and we might get some more specific information that like pinpoints this location sometime before the expansion releases, but all we know is that this is like an enigmatic island where it was thought to be like so remote that it was like inaccessible, or even potentially like non-existent, where it was mostly just like a tale from like sailors and whatnot. So a very interesting idea, and this is kind of like just a way to basically have like a new area that like you can really just throw anywhere. So when we look at like Tyria as a whole, this could realistically just be like an island kind of similar to like South Sun Cove maybe, or you know, Dragonfall, but less so with Dragonfall, where it's just a location somewhere in the Indian Ocean, let's say right here, where there's a massive island that nobody in Tyria had any idea existed, where if you just take a look at the in-game map for a second, we see some interesting areas where it could be located. Where when we think about the idea of it being remote, there's two concepts of it being remote. One is that it's like really far out in the ocean and there's like nothing near it, so it's like an incredibly like isolated area. Or the other concept of remote is we have like Central Tyria here with Ilona and Cantha, where it could potentially not necessarily be like super far away in the ocean, and it could be kind of close to like mainland Tyria like I was talking about, but it's so far away from Cantha, Ilona, or Central Tyria where it could realistically just be like, well, not this island, this is kind of close, but this could potentially be the island where it's just like really, really like far away from like any of the civilizations that we know about. Where the in-game map is cool, but let's go ahead and swap over to the complete map of Tyria that we know about. Where this is a map that was made by that shaman, of course, and I use this map in a lot of videos, and it's a very iconic map. Where this originally comes from a texture rip of like the Derman Priory map that's like on the globe or whatever inside the Derman Priory, where we can get a view of basically the most stretched out view of Tyria that we can see. And there are like some caveats to this, where we see Xingje Island here has a land bridge to like mainland Cantha, which we thought was going to be what happened, but then it got like retconned with End of Dragons, where this land bridge doesn't exist, where we could see this happening everywhere in Tyria, where this is not a 100% accurate map. And also we have names like Kim and Dahye and Ye and Gwen and whatnot. These are mostly just placeholder names. These aren't necessarily like anything that we necessarily like know for certain is what these locations are called, but some of them are cool, like Frozen Gully, Thunder Cove, Dawn, Sunrise Crest, just some cool sounding areas. Or when we look at Guild Wars and Guild Wars 2, basically everything we have explored is kind of in this circle that I'm highlighting right here, where we can go from like as far north as the Isles of Janthier, which we explored in the last expansion, all the way down towards like the Harvest Temple in the Jade Sea, and then really as far east as like Kurna and Vabi and like the Blood Legion homelands with Grothmar Valley, and now as far west as the Horn of Maguma up here, which we get a little bit of in the Secrets of the Obscure expansion. We get to explore just a tiny bit of this, where we then are exploring the fractals that were like ripped into Tyria right off the coast of the Horn of Maguma. So when we look at things that could be isolated from Tyria, we can really look at anything away from here, where, as I said earlier, they could potentially just drop a brand new island somewhere, like maybe we just throw one like right here east of Ilona, where we can't really make too many predictions about that. That's kind of boring to like think about necessarily from like a speculative point of view. It would be really cool to see like in game, of course, and we do have examples of that with like Salton Cove and Dragonfall, but you know, we just have to accept the fact that maybe there's like a brand new island dropped in. But let's look at the other potential options, where we could see a lot of people thought maybe it would be over here by Arid, because we have like this little part of the map that's really interesting to see end game. But then I really view Arid as more of a continent, and we have like the Sunrise Crest area over here as more of a continent. So I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case, where we then have the Sunken Islands. And I also don't think this is going to be the case, because this seems really, really kind of like charted in some ways, where we do have this trading route located here on the Sunken Islands, also the one on the southern peninsula of the Sunrise Crest here. So I don't think we would be going to a very like mysterious and like far away island that no one knows anything about, when we have this island here that has a trading route connected to it. We then have Ye and Gwen, or however we pronounce Ye, or Ye, where this could be where Castora is. One of these islands could be renamed to Castora, and this could really realistically be the case. It could be either of these islands, but also it does feel kind of close to like the Sunken Islands and Xingje Island and the Battle Isles, where it doesn't feel too enigmatic, and maybe this is like too big of an area, where we could also then look at the islands down here, where these feel like maybe a little small to introduce like 4 maps, but we can talk about where the other maps for this expansion are going to be located as well. Where we then have Kim and Dahlia here, where I think these are also good contenders for like rare Castora it could be, but I have a feeling that it might be Dawn. So if it's not like somewhere like random, I feel like this might be the best area, where when we look at kind of like the Horn of Maguma and Isles of Janthier, we can see that maybe the map just extends a little bit this way, where then we'll get like more of like this area shown on the world map as well, which would be really, really cool to see. But this feels like a very like comprehensive, kind of small like island, but like a big enough island that it could be used for like the expansion with 4 maps. Also, the name Dawn kind of feels similar to like the concepts that we have seen with the expansion, where there's a lot of like sunrise and sunset vibes going on, where Dawn kind of sounds similar to that, where this is obviously like a placeholder name and this island would be called Castora, but maybe this is kind of reminiscent of that idea of like the vibes we see with this expansion, where we also got like Sunrise Crest here, which maybe that fits in a little bit more. This also feels really isolated from the rest of Tyria, and that would make like a lot of sense, where this seems like it could potentially be kind of like an avenue that a lot of sailors go to through the Unending Ocean, and there's like a fable of like a bunch of like islands that are like enigmatic up here, where maybe Dawn could be included within that, and is really far away from like Janthier, where as far as like traveling on land goes, the Far Shiver Peaks and the Isles of Janthier is like the furthest north that a lot of Central Tyrian civilizations have gone to, where this like icy tundra area and stuff is like very hostile or whatever, and like inhospitable, where potentially like the Coden and maybe the Norn descended from Codens potentially came all the way from up here. So there are hints like of some civilizations up here, but it's really, really like dangerous to go like even further north than the Far Shiver Peaks. So if I were to just like throw down a guess for maybe a pre-existing area that we could think about, it could really be Dawn. But we also have to like consider like the Corsairs coming from Istan, where they might be in Lion's Arch, where really, you know, on a boat, if you do like a very long voyage, you can sail to anywhere. But maybe like from Istan, it could make more sense to come over here to like these 2 islands of Kim and Dahlia. But again, it could be a brand new island, and it's just really interesting to think about where potentially this could be, where I have a feeling we are not going to know for sure until the expansion releases, and we'll find out on the launch day of the expansion, which is super exciting. But I could definitely see the map just being expanded to then include Dawn, and then we can get some more hints of some of the other areas of Tyria, but maybe that expands the map too much, and we could potentially see it like more located like around this area, but that doesn't really feel like it fits the vibes of what we know about this area of the world. Now let's go ahead and kind of dive into the general story speculation and the direction of the Guild Wars 2 story moving forward. We're really quickly to basically look back on some of my speculation. I speculated a lot about where we would be going, where I talked about potentially Dajka, where I'm at right now, or we could be going to Joteka, which is incredibly interesting from the cut Guild Wars Utopia expansion, which actually looks really similar to the concept art we get for this expansion. And then I also talked about the potential for Zalana and also for the Battle Isles, which it does not look like we will be touching any of those necessarily, but a really interesting theory that I saw is that the latter part of this expansion could be taking us to Joteka, where we have another basic magic storyline going on here. And a very interesting part about the last two expansions that we have been interacting with is how the other realms and planets and whatnot outside of Tyria itself have been looking at Tyria, because it's dead in the water because of all the Elder Dragon shenanigans, and Orion is trying to fix things up, but there's like so much chaos and stuff kind of going on where we really need to try to defend Tyria against any demonic threats. And where we've seen like the Cryptus try to invade Tyria, and we've seen that the Titans try to invade Tyria in the last two expansions, and now potentially we could see maybe the Asura are trying to invite another demon race into Tyria itself, maybe potentially to try to like take control of Tyria by using the demons, kind of like how Bengar Ruinbringer thought he could use Jormag to control the world, but he obviously could not. But maybe they think they could harness something from the demons or from their demon world in order to gain power, where the Inquest really just care a lot about power and do focus a lot on the concepts of magic. Where there's the potential we could see some direct magic dragon storylines going on here, because we see with Kudu and Kuda that they really focused a lot on the concept of harnessing like dragon magics in order to try to like create like some sort of specimen that could be all of the dragons combined in a way. So maybe we see some sort of like magic storyline going on with Castora, where we see that they are trying to use the magics on Tyria to harness it in some way, because a lot of the ley lines around Tyria are directly going to Castora, which really quickly I want to say is kind of an interesting concept for the overall world building of Tyria, where we've been thinking a lot on this channel recently about like all the different places throughout Tyria and how they could be impacted by like the Elder Dragons and whatnot. And you know, the ley lines are basically like the veins of Tyria for the most part, where ley lines are going to be going everywhere across Tyria. And now we see this remote island that is called Castora, which has ley lines, so we can assume that there's ley lines going everywhere, which could also mean that this could open up the possibility with Castora to see other civilizations kind of like utilizing like the ley lines and also like the magical imbalance. And we could also see these other like potential like factions or nations or whatever across Tyria also interacting with demons, where maybe the Cryptus invaded them as well, or maybe they're trying to like negotiate with the demons in order to stop whatever these Central Tyrians have been doing for the last however many years. But I think it would be really interesting to see exactly what the Inquest goals are, where on the most simplistic sense it's just power, but where this power is coming from and what they want this power for is interesting. Is it going to be, you know, power from demons? Is it going to be trying to take control of Tyria or whatever? But another really interesting concept and theory that I've seen and I've been thinking about is how maybe they're trying to find a way to transport themselves from Tyria to another realm, kind of like what we did in Soto, where we went to Inner Niles through the Astral Ward's help. Maybe the Inquest are trying to open a portal to another realm, which then loops us around to Joteka, where potentially maybe we could even be going to Joteka in this expansion, where we could spend the first two maps in this expansion exploring Castora and just hanging out and seeing everything, and then the last two maps are us following the Inquest through a portal that maybe they create at the end of the base expansion release into Joteka, where they are doing a lot of crazy stuff around there for whatever power reasons they want. But this then brings us back to another concept that I've been thinking a lot about, and I speculated a lot about, where I was pretty sure we would be focusing on like a Mingus storyline in this expansion. And on the forefront, it does not seem like we're going to be really focusing on them at all. But there is still the potential that we could be focusing on Mingus, where maybe the Inquest are trying to like gain power from Mingus or from other human gods. And then in the, I guess we could say unlikely, but potentially likely scenario that we do actually go to Joteka as part of this expansion, we could definitely be interacting with gods there. But I do feel like Joteka is definitely worthy of being an expansion in its own right. But maybe this could lead us to a Joteka expansion, but maybe that expansion would be too similar to this one. So it'll be really, really interesting to see what the exact direction for the Guild Wars 2 story is moving forward. But we just see so many similarities between Joteka and between Castora, where I just do definitely feel like there's like a gut feeling that maybe we will be interacting with Joteka in some form, because a lot of like certain designs comes from like the original Utopia concept arts, and just through like the Inquest storylines and through what we've seen with Castora, there's just like so many different like small connections between like the concept of like eternity and what Joteka is, with like related to time, and with like all the magic shenanigans going on. I just feel like there could definitely be like the possibility that there's something going on here, whether or not it's in this expansion or if it's leading to like the next expansion or something, where if we are continuing away from like Joteka and maybe down more like another demon storyline, it'll be interesting to see what kind of demons we interact a lot with, because going back to the original Guild Wars, we really see the Oni and the Titans as like dominant demons, and now we've interacted with both of them, where the Oni are like exiled cryptists basically, and then the Titans are Titans, of course, from Guild Wars and Guild Wars 2 now, where we've kind of dealt with all of those storylines, where we have some interesting demons like Flesh Reavers and Imps, but then we also got stuff like Marganites, and then I guess we could consider like the different minions of different human gods, like the Shadow Army, which we've been talking about related to Mingus, as being potential demons that we could interact with. Or maybe we could see something where like Visions of Eternity is like a very like vibrant expansion that will lead into like a more darker like shadow focused expansion as the 7th expansion, looking ahead in like a year and a half or whatever. It'll also be interesting to see how Ritlock Brimstone plays a part in this story, because we do know like Ritlock, the first Revenant, is very heavily connected to the Mists and was very involved with Balthazar in the Mists. In the Path of Fire expansion, we discovered all about that. So maybe we could see Ritlock, you know, potentially just playing a random part in this expansion and just being a character that hangs out with us, and he's like a fan favorite character that people love a lot. But maybe he'll play more of a specific direct part in this expansion, where he'll specifically be helping us with the Mists. So if you do see something at like the end of the base expansion that does take us somewhere else, like potentially to Joteka, we could see Ritlock being a really important character to help us out, to guide us through this part of the story, and in order to like beat back whatever force. And it'll also be interesting to see if Zosha comes and plays a role in this story, now that Zosha and Ritlock are kind of similar in some ways, or they've traveled to very, you know, interesting other realms. And they're both members of Destiny's Edge, of course, and Ritlock hasn't seen Zosha, to my knowledge, for like a very long time, longer than us, of course. And then Zosha is really, really involved with the Inquest, where, of course, Kudu was like the other mentor of Snaf that we interacted with a lot throughout the Guild Wars 2 like personal story until we defeated him in the dungeon storyline specifically, where Zosha does hate the Inquest, and now she's on to like bigger things, but we could see Zosha coming back to deal with Inquest as a tiny thing who are involved with something bigger, be it Mingus, be it Joteka, be it some sort of new demon race that we will be interacting with, or be it with whatever sort of interesting thing we will be moving forward into the future. Just to rapid fire some like final ideas, we can see this potentially connected to like the deep sea monster we've known about for like a very, very long time. This could be leading the way to like meeting some sort of new like faction or nation somewhere. This could be leading to some sort of like other race of Savari storyline with this like big tree. This could be leading back to some sort of like Orien based storyline, like kind of concludes her story as she like goes to her slumber for 10,000 years. This could connect back to a world trekking concept that we were thinking about, where maybe we'll be interacting with Cantha or Alona as part of this expansion, or maybe even like returning to like some other areas of like Centrateria and around here. This could definitely lead to a lot of pirate themes, where maybe the Corsairs are actually secretly onto something much bigger than we think, and then to any number of many possibilities, which you can go ahead and leave a bunch of comments down in the comments section. I would definitely love to hear your theories, but basically all we know and like the main things we can speculate about: Inquest bad, Inquest wants something, we stop Inquest, and likely in the story Inquest will partially succeed or maybe even completely succeed, and then we'll have to deal with the aftermath of that, with whatever that could be. When we look at elite specializations, I don't want to go too in depth with this in this video, where it is really interesting to see all the elite specializations that have been announced, and I'm planning on hopefully doing a live stream during the beta week in order to dive deeper into each of the elite specializations, and hopefully I'll be able to try them out during that week if I can find time. But all of them so far are super interesting, and I'm excited to see the last three as they get fully announced, where the elite specializations are definitely being announced like a little slowly, like over the course of a month that we have experienced, and there's probably going to be some other stuff that is announced with this expansion that we'll see here and there until we eventually reach the launch date for this expansion, which I'm super excited for. And looking at people in the community, it seems like a lot of people are actually pretty happy with what we have seen so far with this expansion, where a lot of people are super excited. I asked in my YouTube posts for some thoughts, and I got a couple of thoughts, where one individual is really excited for the Fashion War upgrades, and I am definitely super excited for that. And it's also cool to see the skimmer get a glow up as well, because it's cool to see like these order mounts kind of like revisited and like upgraded, where the Sky Scale didn't really feel like it needed to be upgraded, but it was still kind of a cool system to see. But the Warclaw especially was super cool to see updated with the Janther Wilds, and I'm excited to see the skimmer, and I'm also interested in what future mounts are going to be updated as well, and if there's ever going to be like a new mount introduced to Guild Wars 2, where the last one was the Siege Turtle, right? But as someone who is always pretty happy with Guild Wars 2 updates, even though a lot of people don't like certain updates here and there, especially like the ending of Janther Wilds, where a lot of people did not like the ending, and I was like pretty okay with it. It is cool to see a lot of people being really excited for this expansion, because I am also really excited for this expansion, where I want to make a few lore videos and a few top 10 lists that are like loosely related to the upcoming expansion, where we can get some lore primers and stuff going for what we may be experiencing. So go ahead and expect that in the coming months until the expansion releases, and then we can start talking about the lore and story of the expansion as well. And if there's anything else big that drops, I'll go ahead and try to highlight and speculate based on that. But that's going to bring it to the end of this pretty long video, where we went over the trailer and we talked a lot about different pieces of story speculation and whatnot coming with the Visions of Eternity expansion, where I really hope you all enjoyed, and please feel free to leave your own thoughts down in the comments, because I would love to read through your own speculation as well, and we can just have like a lot of different ideas that we can look at going into the expansion and see what actually happens once the expansion releases. But I hope you all enjoyed watching, and I hope you all are taking great care of yourselves. Remember to drink some water and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.